It is Wednesday, my dudes, which means it is time for another First Thoughts and Initial Impressions Epic 7 video. This one will be on the curious case of Urban Shadow Choux, a Moonlight 5-star that is slated to come out tomorrow that somehow still doesn't have a character trailer. We've known about this character for about a week since she's been in the game data, but I usually try to wait for official confirmation before pulling the trigger on any impressions videos. That said, here we are, September 14th. She's in the patch notes, and her skills haven't changed from what they appear to be inside of the game client, so I think it's safe to say we could pull the trigger on this impressions video. In this one, we'll talk about, is she worth your hard-earned mystic medals? Basically, is she good? What sets would I play her on, where I would play her, and what kind of artifact choices I think might be particularly good for her. All of that stuff that you've come to expect from me in an initial impressions video. Normally, this is where I would show you the S3 animation, but we don't have access to it because, again, there is no actual trailer. So instead, we'll just jump into voice actor trivia, followed by her stat line. So, in the English dub of Epic 7, Urban Shadow Choux, as well as regular Choux, is voiced by Carly Craig, who is an impressionist known for being on Mad TV, and is the current voice of Alencia, as well as bomb model Kana in Epic 7. In the Japanese dub of Epic 7, Choux is voiced by Maria Naganawa, who you may recognize as the voice of Kana from Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. And if you're a connoisseur of current gachas that are out there on the market, she is also the voice of Biscuit from Goddess of Victory, Nike. Urban Shadow Choux is a dark warrior of the Aries zodiac symbol, which means she shares a stat line with Abigail as well as Edward Elric. Taking a look at that stat line, she has 984 attack, 637 defense, 6,266 health, 117 speed, 15% critical hit chance, 150% critical hit damage, and no starting effectives or effect resistance. Her imprint for the team is going to be HP percentage, but we don't know her imprint for herself because, well, it's not shown in any of the screenshots that we have so far. And again, we don't actually have an official trailer for the character. As for the stat line itself, 984 attack is pretty low, but it doesn't really matter because all 5-star Aries are actual health scalers. Defense is solid at 637. Speed is very high at 117. This is the third fastest warrior stat line in the game. And the health at 6266 is good-ish. It is normally fine for anything other than a health scaler. Like if this was an attack scaler, around 6300 HP is perfectly serviceable. But for an HP scaler, it is kind of a downer because they're usually around 6700 or higher. So it's a little lower than where you'd like it to be for an actual health scaler. Moving on to Choux's skills, let's jump over to the actual E7 client itself because, well, the character is already in the client and has the same skills as the patch notes, and in fact has the full information on the S2 passive, so it makes no sense to read the skills from the patch notes when we could just get more information from the actual in-game character itself. So let's do a quick once-over of the skills, and then we'll come back and talk about the character collectively as a whole. First up is Urban Shadow Choux's S1, Zippity Zap. It has a 0.5x attack multiplier, as well as a 10% max health multiplier. Attacks the enemy with a spear and increases the combat radius of Choux by 15%. When it is Choux's turn, she gains 1 focus. You can soul burn this move for 10 souls to change the multiplier to a 0.8x attack multiplier, as well as a 16% health scaling multiplier. Her S2 here is Wild Charge. It increases the critical hit chance of her by 20 to 30% depending on Malagora. At the start of the turn, gains 1 focus and grants Bzzzt to the caster for 1 turn, and when focus is full, resets the cooldown of her S3, Operation Cream Puff. Bzzzt is an undispellable buff that reads, after attacking, inflicts 2,000 fixed damage and injuries on all enemies. The severity of the injuries increases proportional to the fixed damage. Injuries decrease max health of the target by up to 10%. Applies to heroes only, like all injury skills, because this thing would be broken in PvE otherwise. Finally, we have our S3, Operation Cream Puff. You acquire 2 focus upon use, as well as 2 souls. It has a 4 to 5 turn cooldown, depending on Malagora. It is a single target attack with a 0.5x attack multiplier, as well as a 25% max health multiplier. Attacks the enemy using adaptable tactics, inflicting injuries, and increases speed of all allies for 2 turns. When focus is full, consumes all focus to recover the caster's health, and a successful attack deals additional damage equivalent to 60% of injuries inflicted on the target. And then you can see damage dealt and amount recovered increased proportional to the caster's max health. That amount, by the way, is 20% of Choux' max HP. The severity of injuries increases proportional to the damage dealt. Injuries decrease max health of the target by up to 25% every time this skill is used. So, if it's not obvious by the S1, this character really doesn't want to be on counter set. Like, you could play counter set or unity set on this character if you wanted to. You're just not going to get any focus. It's kind of the balancing factor on the character. So that's going to suggest that the character is probably going to end up being played on speed set, most likely. I think there's probably something you could do with destruction if her damage multipliers are good enough, but I'm not quite sure. The S1 at 0.5x attack, as well as 10% max HP scaling, it's kind of lackluster. It's better than Mort's, but it's not too much better than anyone else's. Like, it's better than Alencia's, but Alencia has trample as well as a defense break added into that S1. So it's just not particularly good. Like, Zippity Zap is not really a good S1 if we're being real here. If you soul burn it, it's a pretty good multiplier at 16%, but it's nothing like crazy. Like, Ilinav's is like 28%, and Briggs is pretty up there too. It's like 22 or 24%. So yeah, even the soul burn, while decent, is not as good as a lot of the other like insane health scaling multipliers. So this skill is kind of not it. What is it is the actual S2 passive. Bzzzt is an absurd buff. Doing 2,000 fixed damage to everything at the end of each of her turns is really powerful, which is kind of why I think you should probably go speed set. Going speed set and having this character be blazing fast and leveraging the 117 speed, it's going to be a lot of true damage coming out. And the fact that it's all injuries means that obviously she's very, very good against tank down or standard style teams. You can reduce the health of hand guys, of Yulhas, Arwells, Apocalypse Ravis, Alencias, your Lethes, all kinds of stuff. So this is a very, very powerful skill. Very, very powerful debuff. You get a ton of gear score worth of stats, by the way, because of that 30% critical hit chance. Like, this character, you could straight up, just like with Apocalypse Ravi, jam her on a critical hit chance necklace, and yes, you will exceed 100% crit chance with that at 100%. But then you don't necessarily have to focus on any damage stats. You could just go blazing fast and get chip damage in with the actual crits on the character. And I expect that that's the way a lot of people will try to build the character, is to go as fast as possible to get as many of these bzzzt procs out as possible and stack up her focus so that way we can use Cream Puff more often. So Cream Puff is basically like a single target version of Death Dealer Ray's S3, his Cloud of Death. If you have enough injury, this thing is just fatal. First off, the thing has crazy good multipliers on it. 25% max health is quite good. The problem obviously being that you have only around 6,300 base health, so it's kind of, I guess, to even it out. So it's going to feel like it's pretty impactful. It's not going to feel like Ilinav S2, that's for damn sure when you soul burn it. But I think you could expect similar performance to like Briggs S3 in terms of how much this hits. And again, if you have a bunch of injuries stacked up from the S2, this thing is just fatal. It dealing 60% of the damage as injuries is just nutter butters. You're just going to explode somebody later on in the game. So yeah, again, my initial impression right now of the character is that there's going to be like two builds. There's going to be a speed build where we have like a crit chance necklace, or maybe even just like an HP necklace, and we're not going to really go for damage. We're just going to go for speed and bulk, be as tanky as we possibly can, cycle our turns in a timely fashion, and just try to injure the ever-loving hell out of people with the S2 passive. So that's definitely one way I think people will go for it. Another one is more of a traditional bruiser that's like, you know, your mid-speed, your 200 to 220 speed bruiser. Just try and get as much damage as possible. That's another way I think people will try to leverage the character. As for how we're going to counter the character, I think barriers are going to be your best friend if you're playing against this character on ladder. Because barriers obviously will mitigate the fixed damage and you won't accrue injury as much. The problem with that is that the frenzy that we currently have makes barriers garbage because it scales like terribly. Like if you get to like Frenzy 7 or Frenzy 8, barriers have like 80% reduced efficiency. It's really, really bad. So I think if this character becomes a terror, like I think she's going to be in the next format, I think it might be time to reevaluate how much we nerf barriers in World Arena, because at this point, there's a million strips in the format with things like Sharoon, and then you have Conquer Lilius, right? There's just a lot of ways, Lethe, Para, there's a lot of ways to mitigate barriers already, I feel like, in the format. Ran. So I don't think we need to worry about that. And then you have, obviously, things that punish barriers like DJB, like Opsig, like Ning Ning. And then now this. Like, this is a character that just, like, rolls you for playing slow if you are not going to be chock full of barriers. So I think it might be time to revisit rolling back those Battle Frenzy changes on barriers, at least, in my opinion, Smilegate. As for actual artifacts on this character, let's take a gander and see what our available options would be. So Bzz is a buff and not an extra attack, because originally my thought was Prayer of Solitude, but it's not an extra attack. It is simply just fixed damage stapled onto either your S1 or S3 at the end of the turn. I could see things like Snow Crystal, because it would make you incredibly annoying. Durandal to speed you up, potentially, if they try to focus you down, because then you will get more injury procs out of the thing. Samsara Prayer Beads, as well as things like Proof of Valor, to have extra sustain. Seem like they'd be fairly good options. Sepulchrum is kind of like a budget version of Proof of Valor as well, so that could also be something for you to try out. Let's see, is there any other like crazy good ones here? Champions Trophy, not so much. I don't think we're going to be building this character on effectiveness whatsoever. I think it's probably going to end up being, like I said, Durandal seems like a pretty good front runner, as does Snow Crystal, Samsara Prayer Beads, and of course, like I said, Proof of Valor, Sepulchrum. Like, those feel like the front runners. I guess for a damage-based shoe, you could potentially want to go for Draco Plate, but I'm more inclined to want to go, like I said, like 250, 260 speed on shoe, as much bulk as I can. Maybe a crit hit chance necklace to have a little bit of chip damage, but the S1 doesn't really have the best multipliers, like I said, on it. And the S3, it has really good multipliers on it, but it's on a character with a body that is just average in terms of its health pool. So that kind of brings down that otherwise amazing multiplier. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm feeling about Choux. Do I think it's worth pulling? Yes. I don't think that Choux is as broken as Navy Captain Landy is, because that's a whole discussion that you guys will hear at the end of the week when I do my account review for the end of this Valorous season. But I do think Choux is strong. Having a character that does 2,000 fixed damage on every single one of their turns, when built properly and, you know, has proper support, can just dominate a game entirely by herself. Remember, you're getting, like I said, true damage on all of your moves. You're getting like a little mini Kayron, ML Kayron S3 on every single move, and your S3 is an execute if the game goes long enough. So we're eventually going to get to a point where Choux's just going to be going, here's an S3, your character dies. Oh, I have full focus, it resets. Cool. Here's another S3, your other character dies. So yeah, she feels like a more proactive version of Death Dealer Ray, in my opinion. So Death Dealer Ray is like a slow ramp-up time before he just starts killing you and you just can't do anything. Choux feels like you're on a much shorter clock. And honestly, she feels like a nightmare for a lot of standard team compositions to play around. I am not looking forward to a meta where I have to play around Choux as well as like Solitaria and Death Dealer Ray and Sharoon and Pirate Captain Flan. Like, man, like, just thinking about it out loud, it just feels so miserable. Choux's good, guys. I think Choux is going to be a definite pickup. So if you have the Mystics, if you've been saving a pity, and she looks cool to you, because I think her design, by the way, is pretty stellar. I think it's a massive, massive, massive improvement over her actual base form here. I love, love, love the hairstyle. I love the jacket. She just feels cool. Even having the tail that's the plug is pretty awesome. So yeah, those are my thoughts overall on Urban Shadow Choux. If I missed anything, as always, let me know down in the comments below, and let me know your thoughts as well on Urban Shadow Choux. I will have a video probably out tomorrow for Lilius if she is shown. If she's not shown, then there's nothing I can really do about that. But there will be several more videos throughout the rest of the week. Potentially, like I said, Lilius. There's still one that I want to talk about with the crafting piece material that I'll probably get that together at some point. And then obviously my account review to kind of summarize my thoughts on the Valorous season, which you could probably expect sometime around Saturday morning. I will be on Epic 7's official podcast tomorrow, so if you have nothing to do tomorrow night, feel free to swing by twitch.tv/Epic7, and hopefully I will see you all there. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye-bye now.